In their different ways, the Pharisees and the chief priests were both pretty confident that if and when Messiah turned up, they would know him when they saw him. This confidence was not well founded, as it turned out. What it seemed to amount to in the end was that they really believed that when Messiah turned up, he would recognize them. In this they were disappointed. More than that, what they found so confusing about him was the people that he did choose to give time to. Lost causes, really. No hopers, spiritual losers. How could he possibly be the Messiah? The question they really should have been asking was, given what is written about him in the prophecies of Isaiah, who else but lost causes and spiritual losers would you expect God's servant to be spending time with? Isaiah 42, 1-9 sets the tone. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smouldering wick he will not snuff out. Now, a bruised reed is past repair, its best days are behind it. A smouldering wick used to be a light, and now there's more smoke than light. Has-beens, therefore, rejects, no longer fit for purpose, that's what's in view. And all this was true of God's people when God spoke this word through Isaiah, this word about not abandoning the has-beens or chucking away the rejects. Of course, this isn't how the rulers of this world operate. If someone's let you down or outlived their usefulness, general rule, get rid. But the servant isn't going to do that, and verse 8 actually tells us why. I am the Lord, that is my name. I will not give my glory to another or my praise to idols. If you look behind any other ruler, you'll find the power behind the throne, the money, the brute force, the intellectual resources that are enabling that person to rule. There is no power behind the throne of God. Instead, you will see the servant of the Lord empowering the rejects and the has-beens. No other ruler would have time for them. This is unmistakably God's rule. In Isaiah 54, 1-10, the image is of an even more painful, hopeless case. God addresses his people in these verses as a barren woman. Even today there is terrible suffering associated with those words. In those days it was a condition that involved real public shame. It was like your family had been paid the dowry and you were receiving your keep, but for what? Your whole purpose was to bear children and perpetuate the family name. All this was true of Israel then and still today. God's people, having been bought by his blood, are still shamefully unproductive in many cases. Well, aren't we? The duties of a wife included the tent back in the day. When Israel was 12 desert-dwelling tribes, she had to put it up, repair it, and extend it when necessary. Can you imagine the wife whose tent is still the smallest one in the camp after years of marriage? Every time they set up camp, it would have been a reminder of her own uselessness. Like the church that has scores of empty pews, and every time we open the doors, we're reminded how unproductive we've become as God's people. But the command here is to prepare for growth, get ready for it now. God doesn't believe in lost causes. In Isaiah 55, the hopelessness addressed is that of someone who has no money. If that's the case with us, we obviously have no way of buying anything, and we will be reduced to living off the scraps that others throw away, the things that have no value, the things that are worthless. But the command here is to buy and eat, and there is a warning against spending money on what does not satisfy. Instead of living off what is worthless, the poor are going to be living on what is priceless. And worthless and priceless are two very different things. Notice the commands in Isaiah 55. Buy, give ear, come, seek the Lord, turn. The thing about being one of life's losers is that nobody cares enough to care what you do. God cares what we do. In Isaiah 56, 1-8, you see that the eunuch and the foreigner, both of whom could have understood from Deuteronomy 23, 1-8, that they were in no way ever going to feature in God's story, they are given their instructions and their promises. You only get team orders if you belong in the team. You only receive his precious promises if you are part of his precious family. The one thing that everybody should have expected from God's servant was that he really didn't do lost causes. He still doesn't. If you have been, thank you for listening.